Alt Cunningham is one of Cyberpunk's most interesting characters. Her journey through the net was one of Pondsmith's first stories, and she's one of the main characters of the Cyberpunk world. Her creation of the Soul Killer and her life in the net is one of Cyberpunk's world-changing events, and her story is not over. 2077 seems to just be the introduction of whatever is going on in the net, Blackwall, and with the rogue AIs, and Alt is at the center of it all. Which is why I think she could be the antagonist in Orion. And if not the antagonist, still a major player, especially if the Blackwall does come down. And if it does, I don't think she will be on humanity's side. When we meet Alt and ask why Brigitte wanted to speak with her, she says that the Voodoo Dolls wanted to fight on our side when the time comes. She speaks as if war is inevitable, as if a fight is going to happen, and if and when it does, she has already chosen a side. She says if the free AIs prepare, it's possible for them to fight. It's clear that she identifies with those within the net. Alt doesn't really recognize her humanity anymore. If there was any type of war or conflict between the AIs and whatever's on the other side of the Blackwall versus humans, I think Alt would not help humanity at all. She would help the rogue AIs and those within the net. She is ready to fight, and even tells V, "We've learned how to turn into pure data, but an animal still prowls inside us, and its instinct to survive almost can't be extinguished. She and the other AIs will do anything to survive. That part of her is not gone, but the rest is." Whatever once existed of Alt within this version of her that we meet is gone. Gone is the humanity. Gone is the connections to humans. And gone is her desire to be human. But is that because this isn't the real Alt to begin with? Or because being trapped within the net for 64 years has removed all aspects of her humanity? Through 2077, we meet Alt. At least a version of her. But is this really even the real Alt? In Never Fade Away, we know that Spider Murphy freed Alt from Arasaka. And in doing so, she freed Alt in pieces. Pieces of her memories, personality, and different parts that made her her. So what do we actually know about the Alt that lives in the net? After dying in 2013 from her deck being disconnected from her body in Johnny's Arasaka raid of the tower, Arasaka would later contact Alt in 2021, asking her to help destroy Soul Killer 2.0, which she agreed to. She wanted to take revenge on Arasaka for everything that they had done, and to do this she got help from Raish Bartmoss, another famous netrunner, who also went on to live in the net after being killed while connected just like Alt was. Unfortunately, Arasaka used this as an opportunity to capture Alt, and forced her to develop Soul Killer 3.0. After being held captive by Arasaka for 2 years, Johnny Silverhand would infiltrate Arasaka Towers once again, and would help to free Alt. This would be when Spider Murphy would successfully release Alt from Arasaka, taking the different parts of her and spreading them throughout the net, tagging them in hopes of finding them later. But what happened next is really unclear, and mostly remains a mystery. Not much is known about what Alt had been doing during those 64 years of being within the net, but Johnny tells us of how Arasaka was always looking for her, searching for her in the Crystal Palace when she was already ahead of them. She built a digital haven for the other victims of Soul Killer, establishing a ghost town in the ruins of Hong Kong. What was once a densely populated city, Hong Kong would be completely destroyed by a plague during the Fourth Corporate War. A bioengineered plague would be unleashed in Hong Kong, making it completely uninhabitable. In response to the city becoming a wasteland from those infected, the Chinese government responded by enclosing the city with a 10-foot wall to contain the disease. Everyone within these walls would die, but the servers remained operational, and this would be where she would set up her ghost town. Raish Bartmoss describes it as a place that AIs that were once humans would go there to pretend they were still human and be amongst their own kind. Alt told Bartmoss there were roughly 24 people within Ghost Town keeping it operating. Apparently, they took the icons of angels when working, and the Ghost Town seemed to be peaceful. Contrary to Alt's numbers, other reports say there are hundreds of human AIs, maybe even thousands. And this was years ago. And this is really all that we know about what Alt did within the net. Other than this, there is one more story that could tell us what Alt did outside of the net. The story Black Dog tells of how a woman named Angel went through a lot to recover Johnny Silverhand's body from the night of the towers falling. She is described as tall, blonde, and beautiful, and her cybernetic arm matches what Alt had when she was alive. She also speaks to Johnny when she opens his makeshift casket and says, "Hello, my love." She also had access to Johnny's music, and she has access to money. There's something suspicious about this person named Angel. Could this be the real Alt? One of the larger or more important pieces of her, maybe even pieced back together after Spider Murphy scattered her across the net. Maybe she found a body to put her consciousness in, which we know is a possibility after living through V and Johnny's situation, but also seeing it with Saburo and Yorinobu. If this is the real Alt and she found a way to live on, then who is the Alt that we meet in 2077? Something that is interesting about the Alt that we do meet is how she lacks a personality. Meanwhile, Raish Bartmoss, who wrote Raish Bartmoss's Guide to the Net, after his death managed to maintain some of his personality. His quirks and weirdness are still there, even if not as prominent as his living form would have been. And although the situation is different, even Johnny maintains his personality. But it's different with Alt. Everything she does is disconnected, cold, calculating, and for her personal benefit. There is no warmness or tenderness from her, which we know she had when she was alive. This version of Alt has almost no personality. She is exactly what you'd expect from a cold, calculating program, with little of her humanity left. And this is most apparent in her conversations with Johnny. There's only one moment of Alt really showing familiarity with Johnny. When she's explaining her form to him, she also says, "As action precedes reaction, so Johnny Silverhand speaks before he thinks." And when Johnny asks if this is a joke, she says, "Only a sliver of memory from Alt's sense of humor," which she doesn't really have anymore. She says point blank, "The Alt Cunningham you strove to save in Arasaka Tower no longer exists." And it's true. This is not the Alt that Johnny loved or tried to save. There's nothing really of her left. And she tells him this twice, not once. She also says that he sees Alt because he wishes to. It's a defense mechanism. His explicit memory is creating a replacement image, because this just isn't what Alt looks like anymore. This Alt says she used Alt's engrammatic data, speaking of Alt as a separate entity, which is interesting, because if this program we're speaking to is using Alt's engrammatic data, then is this just a program, or some AI that found one of Alt's scattered pieces of data to build upon, to use? Some kind of rogue AI using Alt for whatever their end goal is? Or is this Alt and she's just trying to deny and separate herself from who she was? She is quite plainly telling us that Alt is dead and that this isn't Alt. So if we take her word at face value, then this really is not Alt, but instead maybe something else that used her data, absorbed her code, and used her knowledge. Or maybe this is just one piece of Alt that had a piece of her that was more focused on her search for knowledge or power within the net. She does recognize that she created Soulkiller. So there are still parts of her that she acknowledges as being connected to who Alt was. She also says that the human factor that Johnny is referring to and her have things in common. She is once again recognizing that she used to be human, but everything else is gone. It's a bit of a conundrum. Sometimes it seems like this Alt is trying to be Data and reject her humanity. Sometimes that humanity seems to seep out, showing us that she did used to be human. Maybe this is just what it's like to spend 64 years inside the net. Is her personality gone because she's assimilated to just being Data now? Or is this even Alt? There are moments with Johnny that she seems to be calculating how to react. She doesn't understand why he's there, and although she was curious enough to meet with him, she still doesn't really seem to care that he's there. Even after Johnny apologizes, she pauses before saying, "Watch out for yourself, Johnny." This isn't her accepting his apology or showing him that she's still in there. This honestly feels like this might be as much emotion as she can show. This is all she can give to Johnny, someone she once loved. There is almost no emotion behind this. Maybe that pause was even her searching what would be the right thing to say to Johnny in this moment. Or maybe Alt saying, "This isn't Alt," 3 different times, and also saying she isn't Johnny's girlfriend, is her denying that tiny piece of humanity that she may have left within herself. Maybe she wanted to assimilate within the net, to an extent that she chose to forget her humanity. Yet the few moments with Johnny bring those tiny bits out. The joke she makes that she recognizes his engram and wanted to see why he was contacting her. Maybe there is some of Alt in there. It's just buried under all the data and the code. Something else that's also interesting is that Johnny speaks to Alt as if this is the first time they're speaking after everything that happened surrounding her death. He seems surprised that she doesn't really have reactions or emotions towards him. And he even calls her an icy bitch. His reaction to how she speaks to him and disregards their past is surprising to him. I think this is the first time they've spoken. But if that's the case, then how does she recognize his engram code? She doesn't say she recognizes Johnny. She says she recognizes his code. But the last time they spoke, according to Johnny, was after she died, but he was still alive. Alt was contacting Johnny, telling him not to come after her, that enough people had already died. This was before 2023 and before his death. He wouldn't have been an engram at this time. So this means that there would have been another interaction for her to learn his engram code. She, at the bare minimum, would know that his engram existed after his death. Or, at the worst case scenario, she interacted with his engram. Yes, I suppose you could say that Alt probably has access to everything and just knows everything that's going on within the net. But Johnny was in Mikoshi, something she didn't have access to, and needed our help getting to. Another copy of him may exist. Or maybe she just knew about his engram from the moment that it was injected into his head. But I think this opens another possibility. That Alt interacted with Johnny's engram before meeting him in 2077. There's been a long-running theory that maybe Johnny's inaccurate memories are from someone tampering with his engram. What if it was Alt? What if maybe she was protecting her friends by removing them from his memories? But why only remove Morgan Blackhand and not Spider Murphy if that was the case? Maybe she couldn't remove Spider Murphy, but Thompson and Blackhand could be? Thompson was working on a story about Arasaka, and Blackhand was definitely wanted by Arasaka after this bombing. But there's a bunch of small details that have been removed. Yes, it could have just been Johnny centering himself because of his own ego, so this is how he interprets those memories. But what if there's more to it? Maybe Alt had contacted Johnny beforehand and removed some of his memory. She says she recognizes his code. Maybe she recognizes it because she's familiar with what's inside of it, from her own tampering. What if Arasaka was torturing Johnny, and she helped delete some of his memories? Maybe she even did it to protect herself. We have to remember that this alt does not have that connection to Johnny anymore. I think she's capable of this. This theory may be totally far-fetched, and I could be completely off base here. But the way that she says she recognizes his engram code and not Johnny, I think that's important. Not only is this alt capable of these things, but she's also hiding things, which is very apparent. This alt is working for herself, with her own cause and her own desires being the driving force even for helping V and Johnny. Everything that alt is doing is for her own benefit. When we ask her what will happen to the constructs inside Mikoshi, she says they will not be destroyed. They will become part of something greater. What does that mean? What is she planning on doing with the constructs in Mikoshi? Will she absorb them and use them as data to make herself more powerful? Will she use them to prepare for this war that she's speaking about, that her and the other free AIs seem to be planning for? You can even say to her directly, when she tells you she is going to free the constructs and take them with her, you can tell her that she needs to cut the crap. She's going to gobble them up like so many morsels of code and make them part of her, to which she has no response to. She doesn't deny it. And when Johnny says, as if they could hope for anything better, again, she stays silent. Maybe this is all part of her plan. And maybe by the end of 2077, she will have absorbed and gobbled up all the constructs that were freed from Mikoshi, and also gobbled up either V or Johnny. When V and Alt speak alone without Johnny, Alt actually admits this, that they will be integrated with her, but she doesn't really elaborate more on this. Through her, they'll gain the chance to become part of something greater, is what she says. So what is that something? And how will it be greater? Did she plan all of this? Did all of this work out just as she wanted? And did she lie to make sure that this happened? Alt has lived in the net for 64 years, and she was the most powerful netrunner of Night City before. She is extremely powerful at this point, and she is feared. She is capable of things we cannot understand, and she seems to be willing to go to any length for what she's trying to accomplish. For someone who has both experienced Soul Killer and the net for so long, it's hard to imagine Alt making mistakes in the calculation of anything. Yet she says the body is a key factor in this transaction, but she failed to take this into account. Is Alt lacking humanity to such an extent that she truly didn't factor this into the equation? Or did she want to always have to make a construct of V as well? Was that her plan? Is this another construct she is adding to her collection, alongside those in Mikoshi? In majority of the choices in the ending, except the tower ending and suicide, Johnny or V always go with Alt. So in the end, she always ends up with another construct. Was this always her plan? After so long in the net, how could she have miscalculated? How? I don't think she could have. I don't believe that she miscalculated, that she didn't see some possible variable. She knows Soul Killer inside and out. And after 64 years, I don't think there's any calculations she can't figure out. She is all-powerful within the net, all-knowing. I think she lied to V. I think she wanted their engram. For what? I don't know. Alt's story is a mystery, filled with many, many unanswered questions. Is this the real Alt? Is this just an AI that found part of Alt to use? Is Angel Alt? What does she want with the constructs, and what is her end goal? Alt's story is clearly not over, and I do think we'll see her again. Whether she's friend or foe is the real question. So what do you think? Do you think Alt lied? Do Do you think her actions are suspicious? And if we see her in Orion again, which I think we will, what do you think that could look like? Do you think she could be an antagonist? Some type of opposition, especially if the black wall comes down? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. Thank you to my channel members, thank you to my Patreon members, and thank you to all my YouTube subscribers. Because of your guys' support, I can make more videos. So thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time.